Hello!
Hi.
Pastor AJ, it is so great to see you.
It is so great to see you too, Greg. I've missed you so much. I am hugging you really, really tight right now.
I am receiving the hugs. Before we dive in, first, thank you so much for taking some time to join us for this conscious conversation. I'm excited about this conversation, but also that it's the relaunch of this series, which is brought to you by Can't Stop, Won't Stop Consulting. For those who are joining us now or who are going to be watching this later, my name is Gregory Allan Datu Cendana, and I serve as the host for this series. And as I mentioned, I'm particularly excited about our guest today. I'm excited to introduce our featured guest, senior pastor of the Community Church of Washington, D.C., UCC, and founder of Dr. Adalphie J Enterprises, the one and the only Reverend Dr. Adalphie Johnson. Welcome again.
Oh, yes, I like that. I'm like, oh, who's that you're talking about? That's me.
That is you.
Yes, I am so glad to be here and thank you for inviting me to share in this relaunch, which is so exciting. Kudos to you and you all for that, and to be able to have this very important conversation. I'm super excited to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. The theme of our conversation is pride, politics, and the pulpit. I know we have to reschedule this because we initially had it during Pride Month, but we are prideful 365 all year long. So, yes. So, without further ado, can I go ahead and get us started?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So, the first question that I'd love to ask you, and this is a question that we ask all of our guests, in the spirit of Ella Baker, who are your people?
So it's interesting because my people are shifting in this season of my
Mm,
life right now, right? So it's easy for me to say, like, church spaces are my people because I find grounding and, spirits and, love and all those things in the church spaces. It's easy to say my family are my people, right? Because, like, my mom, my children, my sister, her niece, nephews, all those things, those folks are important. Um, and but my people right now, I will have to say it's shifting and evolving. Like, there are always folks who are my core, right? They are the core existence of who I am and who I be. And there are new people that are being added to the fold even as we speak.
mm,
Um, so who are my people right now? Those who are aligned with their purpose,
mm,
right? And who are unapologetically unafraid to walk in their purpose, right?
mm,
Those are my people right now. Those who are not mean girls, folks who are nice to other individuals, who share love and light and joy, and who don't just say, I'm praying for you, but actually praying for
mm,
you.
mm,
Those are my people right now. Those folk who desire more and wants better for whatever life has brought them, and they're trying to obtain it. Those my people right now. Yeah.
I appreciate that. You mentioned that your people have been evolving. Can you, if you're open to it, can you share a little bit more what's led to that evolution? How has that and how has that shown up in how like who your people are and how that's evolving?
Yeah, so like it's been an evolution of grief and excitement at the same time, right? Because one of the things that has always been important for me as a cancer, we're just coming out of cancer season, or getting ready to come out of cancer season, but as a cancerian woman, relationships are very important to me. So when I consider someone friend, when I consider someone family, like that means everything to me and then some. So in this season, I would say it's been like a maybe 3 year season where like my friendship circles started changing. Like, the people that I used to hang out with, we don't hang out as much, or we weren't hanging out as much, or some of the things that people were doing was no longer aligning with the things that I like to do and the things that I desire to do. And so, initially up front, it was like, oh, this is great. My vibe is changing. My circle is changing. I enjoy it. But then there was a period of grief
Mm.
because I also realized in that moment that some people, we will never be what we were.
Yeah.
And that too came with some tears. That too came with a little bit of tug and pull. But I have been so clear and more clear in this season. And by this season, I'm talking like 2, 3, 5 years, right?
Yeah.
That who and what is around me, it has to be a reflection of either where I am or where I desire to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I well, thank you for your vulnerability.
Yeah.
I'm sitting and reflecting because a lot of what you're saying resonates. One of the things that we like to talk about in the context of the firm is the spheres of influence, and
Hmm.
how I think about it is when we are in better relationship with ourselves, we can be in better relationships with other people. And therefore, the organizations and the systems that we are a part of are also impacted and informed by that relationship. And as I've been on my own healing journey, and as I've been uh, trusting my instinct more, as
Hmm.
I've been feeling like I'm able to be more discerning with
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
I spend my time, but I think what I'm also hearing you say, what that means for who you surround yourself with, that I am also realizing that there's a lot more that I have to recognize that is in my control in terms of what I am able, like who I'm spending time with, the people that I'm around, especially as it relates back to my own dreams and goals, what makes sense for my peace, and what will allow me to both thrive, but also have the best conditions to do what I can in an already challenging world, right? There's already things that have to come our way in terms of the things that we're navigating in life, and so where I have control, how do I focus on that and take more ownership of that too?
Yeah, yeah. So I live my life in music, right? So, I'm about to quote on this good Beyonce's internet. I hope they don't shut us down. This song that she has, and she talks about release your job, release your mind, a motivation, and so I think about it even in a sense of I would never tell somebody to walk away from your job or from your place of employment. But
Mhm.
if the core values of that job do not align with who you are, and you find yourself, having more anxiety and more, challenges around even getting up and going to work in the morning or going to work at night, what you can control is maybe it's time to freshen up your resume, right? Maybe it's
Mhm.
time to look and see what's out there so that you can shift that part of your environment. You may not be able to change the toxic work environment, but what you might be able to change and have control over is you. So, it has worked for me, and I've had those shifts in the workplace, in family spaces, in friendship circles, in the church house. I mean, we could speak the gambit of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, this is a nice segue, I think, to the next question that I'd love to ask you. And that question is, when was the last time you felt brave?
Hmm. So I actually felt brave 2, 3 days ago. So I have my obviously, well, not obviously, but I'm a Black woman with a doctoral degree.
Yes. Say
Yes,
that.
okay. And it's not honorary. Shout outs, to all the folks that have honorary degrees. But I spent 3 years, in the schoolhouse, and I have the student loans to prove it. I wish they would lose my file one day and Jesus paid it all. But until then, I would speak about it, right? But so one of the things that I think about in the aspect of creating those spaces and what those things look like and how I find aspects of joy, right?
Mhm.
And what that joy and what those things look like for me. I find those spaces, the places, those things, and being able to do the things that make my heart sing, right? The things that I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, I really love that. Even as a Black woman, even as, a lesbian identified woman, even as one who believes in Jesus and crystals too, they all have space in place that creates that sense of balance and joy for me. And ask me that question one more time because there was something that I was thinking about that I wanted to say when you shared it, but the thought missed me. So I want to make sure I hit that back.
Yeah, the question was, when was the last time you felt brave?
Yeah. And so, in the spirit of being brave, right? And what that looks like, 3 days ago, I submitted 2 proposals for the National Sex Ed Conference. And I don't know if the proposal is going to be, accepted or not, but I felt brave as a mug to put this doctoral degree to work and to submit those proposals. And that was super exciting for me. And I love that. So that was on like a professional front, right? On a personal front, I have been in this space of pushing myself to be brave and feel brave for the past 12 months. I just hit my 45th birthday, which is
Yes.
exciting. So I've been pushing myself to do things that I necessarily may not have done, right? So if I think about doing it, instead of talking myself out of it, I just do it. I book it and I go, whether it's me going by myself or it's me going with other individuals, right? But taking those chances and being brave and doing those things that I may not ordinarily do because I can always find a reason to do other things for other people, but I don't spend as much time doing those things for myself.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yes, I well, one, sending you lots of positive energy on the proposals that you sent there, but any other future proposals? A mentor of mine growing up, especially in the context of fundraising, but I think it applies generally around making any asks and putting things out there is if you, he told me if you're not making enough, if you're not getting enough no's, you're not making enough asks. And I really sit with that every time that I question, like, should I do this thing? Should I ask for this? Should I put in a proposal? Should I respond to this request for proposals, etc.? And you saying that reminded me of this mentor, and that it does take bravery because there are a lot of people who actually say like, no, I don't think I should do this, or they are inhibiting themselves from even being able to even have the potential opportunity. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep you posted on the response back.
Yes. um, at the introduction of this, I know I mentioned last month was Pride Month, but we are prideful every single day. And I know a thing that I want to name, which comes up in a lot of conversations I have, are people's feelings around sexuality, sexual orientation, and faith.
Hmm.
And both as an out and proud member of the LGBT community, as a woman of faith, and also as the senior pastor of the church that actually made me have a different orientation to what it would look like to
Mm.
have LGBTQ inclusive and welcoming spaces, but also seeing those folks in leadership. Um, and I still think about my time at the Community Church of Washington D.C. because I haven't had always the best experiences when it comes to faith institutions,
Hmm.
and so I will always have a very special place in my heart for what it reframed and pushed me on what is possible in what we call church. So, all that to
Mm.
say, can you share a little bit more about your journey and what it taught you about the relationship between faith and identity, particularly sexuality and sexual orientation?
Yeah, so it's interesting in the sense of I'm a church girl. And by church girl, meaning my parents, born and raised and grew my sister and I up in the church. My mom and my dad were members of a church when my mom was pregnant with me. So, I came out the womb, maybe not speaking in tongues and toting the Bible, but I was at the church house. And so my experience with church and spirituality and religion is framed in a sense of I was at church Sunday to Sunday because there was always something happening at the church house, right? I was deeply involved in the usher ministry, even as a child, in the singing and youth choir, did all of these things because it was a part of our my spiritual, cultural upbringing, experience, and the like. What was interesting for me is that it wasn't until around, and I'm dating myself here, right? Around the 90s that there started being that I was able to notice more conversations around like sex, sexuality,
Mhm.
gender in the church. And part of it was there was a really big, huge HIV/AIDS epidemic that was going on at that time that had stemmed from the 80s and was still, transition over in the 90s. A lot of people were dying from HIV/AIDS, HIV/AIDS related complications. And, people needed places of worship to host funerals. And it
Mhm.
became really huge topics because churches didn't want to do it, right?
Mhm.
Oh, we don't want to bury people that, or we don't want to funeralize people. We don't want to bring those people into our church. Oh, they're gay. Oh, they're abomination. Oh, we're scared people are going to, contract something with, all the things. And the church that I grew up in, Covenant Baptist United Church of Christ, I will have to shout them out because they were one of very few and very one of the first churches in the DC area that opened their doors with no strings attached, right? Whomsoever will come right on in. And so my understanding of, sex, sexuality, gender, and faith was rooted in like two things that were kind of a truth at the same time. All are welcome, but all really welcome. You
Mhm.
know, what does it mean when folks come in the door? Like you can come in the door, but can you sit in the church house with your partner? You could come in the door, but can y'all hold hands during communion? Can you all's babies be christened or blessed, doing, different ceremonial acts that happen within the church house? And while the church that I was a part of, had a very inclusive belief, what I then also realized is that people in the church house did.
Mhm.
So that's where I then became exposed to like, oh, people really don't like gay people. People
Mhm.
really think that they are an abomination and that, they're going to hell. And, for the longest time, I didn't know any different because, I mean, they weren't doing, there wasn't a lot of teachings that were happening around that. And when I, became of age and said, let me go find out, this church thing on my own, the church I went to then, was a Pentecostal church. So, they shouted all day long. And the minute somebody walked in the church house that looked like they were a part of the LGBTQ community,
Mhm.
the pastor would shift or the preacher would shift their sermon and immediately start talking about, gay people going to hell, and these things. And I struggled because I said, I know I'm not going to hell, but
Mhm.
I don't know spaces that are affirming me as a lesbian woman. So, I'm scared to live in my truth. So I can only imagine how other people are feeling. Um, but I knew that God loved me. And so what that looked like, it was a short reconciliation, and it was a short wrestle. But I'm kind of rebellious anyway, just by nature. And so I'm like, what you mean God don't love me? Like, yes, God does. Like, and there's so many things that I have done in my life that if God could love me through those things, you know, it's not something that will prevent God from loving me. And then when I began to study for myself, right? Because I
Mhm.
always tell people, yeah, the preacher can tell you whatever the preacher wants you to hear. But if you don't pick the book up for yourself, and if you don't pick up multiple books for yourself to actually read to see, you may never know what's being shared. And
Mhm.
once I realized that what people were using as a basis for why, LGBTQ folk are a sin and why they are an abomination, Greg, it's not even factual information that's in the Bible. Like, literally.
Yeah.
It's and not to get all be all in the weeds of the facts, but let's just even take this for size. The word homosexual did not enter into the translation, English translation of the Bible until somewhere between 1943 and 1946. Prior to that, there was no word in the Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek, which are the original translations of the Bible, that equated anything to homosexual.
Mhm.
Nothing. But people have taken something that just entered the text, and the Bible says, and God says, you a lie. The Bible don't say that, and God did not say that either. That's what you said, or what your pastor said, and you run with it, but that's not what the Bible actually says.
Yeah.
Mm.
I thank you for spitting some truth and some facts here. And relatedly, because I think that the example you gave at the church of where folks from the pulpit leader like would change and begin to explicitly name LGBTQ communities. I actually had a similar experience in a Catholic church
Mm.
that I attended. Um, so I know that it is something that happens. So what would you say to someone who feels they have to choose between their faith and who they are?
You do not ever have to choose. Two truths can exist or coexist, if you will, at the same time. Um, and because of that, like that's it. So it's not a matter of can it be. Yes, it can. You can be your prideful self. You can be your gayest self. You can be, your most non-binary self. You can be, the transes, of how you desire and who you believe and who you know you are to be, and still know that God loves you. Now, it may not be the same God that the people say, oh, my God said you're going to hell, because that's not the God that I know. My God is a God of love, right? And even if you don't believe in God, Buddha is a, being in an entity of peace, in love, and so even, in however you find worship, however you find spiritual, grounding and community, there is space for you and your queerness, or whatever you want to call it, to coexist together. It is.
Appreciate that affirmation. If you're listening out there, please take this to heart in terms of there are people to surround you and nurture you, and that you don't have to choose. So thank you
Mm-mm.
for that. Um,
Yeah.
I want to move to some questions now about leadership. And one of your beliefs is that you cannot lead where you have not been. What does that mean to you?
So, I struggle because I feel like sometimes I wonder if like I'm a bit biased when it comes to things like this. And I say that because how did the old folks place it? As a woman who has lived a full life, in these 45 years that I've been here on this earth. I side eye people who try to tell me something and you ain't lived a
Mm-hmm.
piece of that, right? And so I think about it in the context of as a pastor. Um, God has called me to shepherd and to journey with and walk with a group of people in their spiritual walk, right? There are individuals who have come to the place of worship that are on food stamps and are in need of a gift card. I have a different level of compassion because I've been on food stamps.
Mm-hmm.
And I too, at one point, needed a gift card. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I understand when folks say, Pastor, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the church this week because my money is running a little funny. I get it. Because at one point, my car was repossessed and I didn't have money to get on a bus to make it back and forth to church. So I understand these things. And so I believe that when you have had a certain level of experiences, whatever those experiences are, when you've had a certain level of experiences, it enables you and really gives you a superpower to be able to engage with people in a way that moves beyond surface. Oh, I'm just going to pray for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to just pray. Can you point me to a resource? Because prayers are good, but since I don't have no food in my cupboard right now.
Yeah.
So after we pray, like, what we going to do? And so that for me, when I think about you can't lead where you don't go, and there's so many people, and I will say this unapologetically and unashamedly, there's so many pastors and preachers who like they put on this facade. Like, they've experienced these things, they've done these things, and they try, to lead people in a direction, but people can see through the phoniness. People
Mm-hmm.
can see through the fakeness. And I'm not saying that you have to have said experiences to be able to lead people, but you can't lead people where you have not been. You just can't. You can offer advice, you can whatever, but you really cannot lead people where you have not been. And so I just hold fast to that. And that also helps me to stay in my lane
Yeah.
in doing what I know God has called me to do. I have not been anywhere that enables me to do anything about engineering. So I would not be going to go teach no workshop on engineering. I can't lead where I've not been.
Yeah. I chuckle too because, well, two reasons. I think one, what I'm hearing is the lived experience allows you to be a lot more empathetic. The lived experience allows you to be grounded and rooted in a different way, especially when you are trying to serve and be in community with people who are facing those experiences in real time. I also think that, the other thing that I when we talk to leaders, one thing that we also tell them is, this is not to say like you are discounted for not having some of these experiences, but what is it to say, how are you helping platform or create ways for those with those experiences to be able to share their story or to be able to be a part of your team or to be able to also be a part of the leadership, especially depending on the kind of organization or thing that you're doing. And so it's another piece around like multiple truth or simultaneity is like that may not be a part of your experience, but there are other ways to bring that in, and don't let that stop you from being able to try to create the kind of environments and the conditions that have people with a variety of experiences, and I would also say a variety of identities, to feel like they can be included and in a genuine and thoughtful and intentional way.
Absolutely. And I'm actually so glad that you brought that into the space, because that is a sheer reminder that even as leaders, we can't be the end all say all for everything and for everybody. So if we do not open the door to allow other folks to come in, and I think about it in the context of church, I think about it in the context of work. Like there's somebody who's the leader, but then there also are other individuals who, are helping to push the mission forward, who are helping to push the work forward.
Yeah.
And what they have, I might not possess. What I possess, they might not have. But when you bring those individuals together and we build what is really called a really good sense of community, right? Being able to see what you have and honor your experience in work, whether it's academia or lived experience, right? But being able to honor those things and bring that into the fold so that we too can do and complete the mission and et cetera that is supposed to go forward.
Yeah. Um, this leads me to the next question, Pastor AJ, around obviously you hold different roles, right? You from the
Hmm.
church, from to your work with DC Public Schools, to owning your own enterprise, to just simply existing in the world as a strong Black woman. Can you share a little bit more about how do you stay grounded while leading across many different spaces? And I would also add, like in this current political moment that we find ourselves in.
Sure. Listen, this political climate is trash, okay? Let me say. So, one of the things that is on top of my list, or two things, was a couple of things that are important to me to help me stay grounded. So, one of those things is like my spiritual practices and whatever those look like, right? So, sometimes that includes waist beads, and sacred, ceremonial rituals around there. Sometimes it's, me at my altar that I have over here, that has crystals and, other things that help to keep me grounded, where I'm able to, channel and talk to my ancestors, because I've been needing strength, for the journey. Because I am a church girl, Jesus and God, who are omnipresent, are all mixed up in that. And being able to take time out to pray. And I'm an early morning girl. So, they call it witching hours. I don't want to spook anybody out, but, I'm one that is up typically around 3 or 4 in the morning. And they say that like that's during the time between like 3 and 6 a.m., like where the earth on this side is like really quiet and like the witches,
Mm,
that they're moving about and around, so I be up, you know, during that time, go, infer what folks will. But I also am very intentional about keeping my therapy appointment.
mm,
My therapist, like, and seeing my therapist keeps me grounded in ways that um I am grateful, and those that are around me should be grateful too. Listen, because life is difficult and life is hard, and sometimes there's just a lot of things that happen and go on. But my therapist does a really great job of helping to keep me grounded, and of course, like the things like I like to travel. I like to go get my hair done or, buy lipstick. That keeps me grounded. Connect with other organizations that, are purpose driven and that do things that I like to do. That helps to keep me grounded. And I love laying down, Greg. Like I just like my bedroom is like my sanctuary. So I will lay down in the bed and have the blinds up morning, noon, and night and will feel so at peace. Yeah. Of course, I like touching trees. Get me to some grass because I'm a water sign. If I need to get to water, I have to because if not, I feel like a fish out of water. Mhm. I can feel it when I have not been to water in a prolonged period of time.
yeah. Well, one, while I'm a Gemini, I'm a Cancer rising and a Pisces
Yes.
moon. So I have water in my big three and in my chart through and through. So a lot of what you're saying resonates. And I have a lot of very similar practices.
Mhm.
I'll shout out my therapist because I just had a session with her today and
Yeah.
realized that we've been working together now for 10 years, which feels which is quite the journey, and also her and I have been through a lot together, so I'm grateful for her support and her nurture. Um, and I sometimes call her my co-facilitator because there are things that I learned from her that she invites me into, she agitates me, and I'm able to kind of bring that into how I show up each and every day. One of the things that she tells me, she reminds me, is that we are a collection of all of the experiences in this one in any given moment, and that those
Mhm.
experiences inform how we show up. It informs the actions we take. It informs how we might answer a question or things that come our way, and it's helpful to just kind of reground myself in that. So shout out to all the therapists out there doing
Yes.
some hard work, the Lord's work, to keep folks grounded and to have a place to process a variety of things that folks are holding.
Yes, yes. Listen, they are out here doing the Lord's work.
um, I want to move to some questions now about like the future and like moving
Yeah.
towards the future. What role do you think faith leaders should play in advancing justice for LGBT communities?
So the thing about like the role of faith leaders now, I have to take a step back to like what was the role of the church and faith leaders prior to, right? So
Mhm.
when we think about how the church, how faith spaces were created, especially for Black and Brown folks, right? They were created out of the need to have a space that was affirming, a space where, we could worship, a space where we, could talk and discuss and share, in spirit and be enlightened and, all of those things. And the pastors, back then were also the neighborhood doctors and the neighborhood lawyers. They were also, the other towns, people and mayors and things. So when I think about now, what the role is of faith leaders, the role has been what it always has been, to
Mm.
show up, right? We've never had the luxury of backing out, of not doing something. And if we want to follow the example of Jesus, right? Jesus was in the thick of things. Jesus was at the well with the woman. Jesus was, in the temple. Jesus was at these places. When we think about Muhammad, in Islamic faith, Muhammad wasn't hidden behind, some temples. Muhammad was out,
Yeah.
moving about, and so when we think about the role of faith leaders, the role is not for us to expect for the people to come to us to get what is needed. We're supposed to go to the people and give them what has been
Mm.
commissioned to us, right? And so that's what our role is. And even in the LGBTQ spaces, that's what our role is, but I'm gonna be honest, there's some faith leaders that I don't want advocating for me in the LGBTQ space,
Mm.
because their heart is not in the right place, because their spirit is not in the right place. And while I'm not, here to judge, but maybe your advocacy efforts are best suited somewhere else, right? Maybe you need to advocate for Black women because you also are meeting the needs of Black women and queer Black women who might be in that space. Maybe you can speak to that better, right? But some of us, and not just the queer church and faith leaders, even the allies have a responsibility to be a part of the advocacy work that happens around LGBTQ folk. We do not have the ability to pick and choose what we choose to fight for. If there is a threat to injustice anywhere, okay, is a
Okay.
threat to justice everywhere. And
Yeah.
so if my queer siblings, There's a threat to their justice, and they're experiencing injustice. With the platform that I have as a faith leader, I have a responsibility. And my responsibility is to advocate for, to speak out about. Now, I may not be able, now I can get up and, speak all the things that need to be spoken and say all the things that need to be said. But maybe for someone else, that's not how you advocate. Maybe your advocacy is getting the case of water to ensure that during the Pride Parade, folks have water to drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a piece of advocacy, right? Maybe it's sharing a flyer about the Pride service that is happening. It may not be at your church, you may not be on the program because you're not there yet, but you at least can share the flyer. Those are the things that I believe that, we are able to do because we do have a responsibility. Because it's not about what we believe is right, it's
Yeah.
about what God has commissioned us to do. And the word says our responsibility and our duty is to love, no matter who or what you believe in. If you are atheist, you still are taught to love somebody or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one, I appreciate your reframe here because I think what I'm hearing you say is the role has never changed. Now, how folks take on that role, how folks receive that role, how folks show up or not has maybe shifted and or it varies based on who you're talking to, but that that role or that the intention that you are saying has not changed or should
Yeah.
not have changed. I also appreciate you sharing this piece around some of the examples, right? Sharing the flyer, bringing the water, because I think this goes back to the earlier part of our conversation where we said, like you may not have a lived experience, or you may not have an identity, right? You may not be queer yourself, you may not be trans yourself, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't make sure that queer and trans folks have opportunity to speak from the pulpit, that they are also engaged in your leadership, that you are providing programs and services that are mindful of the unique needs of queer and trans people. So I
Yes.
so I'm glad that we were able to see some different connections to different parts of our conversation, because I think that is another way to invite people to like say, like, you may not be queer and that's okay. You're not perfect. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that it's a reminder that there are other ways to play a role, and especially if you are a leader, that
Yes.
there's a level of responsibility to figure out what are these different ways, even if you may not necessarily identify with a particular identity or community.
Exactly, exactly. Like for instance, and I'll hop off of it, but like, for T-Door, Trans Day of Remembrance. Folk don't need to hear me as a cis woman getting up talking about, now granted, I can share, paying honor to, but someone from the community needs to be up and
Mhm.
speaking. Let me provide the space and give you the microphone to share whatever needs to be shared. On Lesbian Visibility Day, tag me in, coach. I can hop in then. But, but those are examples of,
Yes.
how we can do those things to step up and step back
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be able to ensure that folks are able to see and experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being an ongoing model for folks.
Yes.
Um, I want to ask a question about young people. I know as a parent, as someone who works with young people in a variety of ways, I know the community church has a strong youth program.
Yes.
What are you learning, or what are young people teaching you, teaching us about leadership, about faith, about belonging, about like the world we're living in?
One, that we really need to loosen up. Like, we are too uptight. Like, we are too buttoned up. Like, we gotta relax. Like, our pressure is high for no reason at all. Like, we are giving our own selves panic attacks and anxiety attacks, all these things, because we're always at 10. Young people
Mhm.
have this way about them where, I appreciate the fact that, it seems as if they don't care about nothing. right? Like nothing phases them, like nothing bothers them. And that's something that I try to ensure that I take from their book. Not to be dismissive about the things that happen around me, but sometimes things really just are not that serious.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's one of the things that I've been able to, see and hear from them. What I'm also hearing and seeing from the young people is that they really are tired of our stuff. Let me not curse on this good people's internet. They are, can I say one curse word?
Yeah, you can say a curse word.
Okay, they are tired of our shit. Do you hear me? Like, they are tired of our homophobic ways. They are tired of our transphobic ways. They are tired. And I hear it in the schools when I go talk to these young people. And when they talk to me about the issues that they're having, it's never with their peers, it's with the adults. Because the
Mm.
adults don't know how to act, because the adults are homophobic, because the adults are saying sideways things out of their mouths, because the adults are treating them any kind of way. And so they really are tired of our shit. They need us to get it together so that, we could be better understanding, better accepting. They talk about so much how we just don't hear them.
Mhm.
And they just want to be heard. They just want to be accepted. Not, they need to conform to this way or that way, but to just be accepted, right?
Mhm.
And then the other piece around, young people have been talking a lot about not feeling like folks are taking them serious.
Okay, we're back.
They kicked us out the group, Greg.
Just as you are about to quote the Whitney Elizabeth Houston, of course.
The Whitney Elizabeth Houston. They kicked us out the group chat.
Well, why don't we let's if you could I know it cut off right when you're about to start. Can we just pick up from where we left off?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thought around like with our young people and our children and our youth, right? They really are our future. And that's what Whitney, the great Whitney Houston sung about, but also knowing that the future is now.
Mhm.
And so they're able to lead now. They're able to advocate now. They're able to use their voice now. They don't have to wait until they go off to college to then put some of these things into practice. They can do that now. And I think that's like the biggest thing that one of the biggest things young people just, they share about, they really want adults, to realize that no, I can speak for myself. I can advocate for myself. I can tell, and talk about what feels good for me and what does not feel good for me. They can do those things. And they are very well equipped to do so. I know I've spent time with the community doing that work with young people. I know you have and countless others. So surely the works that we've done should, be bringing forth some really good seeds at this point, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, one, I want to just affirm and appreciate the range in ways you brought music into this space from starting with Beyonce. You then quoted Whitney Houston. And I appreciate the ongoing ways that even in this work, the intergenerational work that you're doing, that
Hmm.
it would bridge. I like to think that folks from our generation are a bridge generation because I
Yes.
think our parents and our grandparents and the folks who came before us, we have a way of being in relationship with them, and then we have a way of being in relationship with our peers and the generations that are coming after us. And
Hmm.
I find that intergenerational work, no matter the community, no matter geography, is a critical part of how we both stay connected, but also um, continue to think about both the future, to what you were saying,
Yeah.
but the ongoing legacies and the ways in which thinking about what we're leaving behind and the impacts that we'll have, but also the conditions in which these future generations will have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I know we're getting close to time. I think the last thing I would love to ask you is, well, there's two questions. So this is the last question around what's your message to LGBTQ people of faith?
Hmm. To live your life, right? To live it and walk in the truth and the love that is already promised to you. You're not a mistake. You're not, confused. God loves you. Buddha loves you. The trees love you, right? But know that you are light and that you are love and that you are worthy of spiritual relationship and connection.
Mm.
Like you're worthy of that. And that's the part that I think is often missed. Folk don't believe that they're worthy enough to be spiritually connected to whomever or whatever that higher being is. But you're worthy of that. And you definitely deserve that for sure.
Oh. Mm. Well, this has been such a inspiring, insightful
Yes.
conversation. Before we officially close out, Pastor AJ, would love to see if there's anything that you want to share that you're currently working on to give for folks that are tuning in, and then also for folks who want to stay in contact. What's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. So I would not be the senior pastor of the Community Church of Washington, D.C., United Church of Christ, if I did not take this opportunity to invite you to worship with us. We have worship every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. You can find us on Facebook at the Community Church of Washington, D.C., UCC, or on Instagram, CCWDC_UCC. We stream live every Sunday. We would love for you to worship with us. You can find me at Dr. Adalphie J, DrAdalphie J. That is my Instagram and my Facebook, and we'll drop it over in the chat. Feel free to please follow me. I follow back. Or follow me on Reverend Dr. Boss Lady Adalphie. That's my more private page. So, we got to check that one out. But yes, definitely follow me and I follow back. So let's connect and do this work that out in the words of the great ancestor, Katie Cannon, that we can do the work that our souls must have.
Mm. I am so grateful you took some time. I am so grateful that we still get to continue to be in community. I am so grateful
Yes.
for the place that you, the Community Church of Washington D.C., has in my heart. And thank you again for joining us.
Yes. Have a great one. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good night.